So one way to do that is to just hold the pencil with your finger and then rub on the side of the wood with your finger. And it doesn't matter how far you go, as long as it's kind of in the middle, and you go around a couple of times to make sure that you haven't slowly been moving it. And now you end up with a nice little square in the middle, and you know that that's pretty much the center of your wood. Then I have an old spade bit, and I had lots of these 18, so I cut it off and glued it into a little handle. You can find an old handle, or you can make a handle. This was a piece of wood, it's got some nasty cracks in it, some maple, so don't really use it for anything much, but for tool handles it doesn't matter so much. And then so you go here and punch a little hole into it, and that'll go into the tailstock. I like to always hold stuff in a chuck. You could essentially put a dry spur here and then turn it to a dry spur and then put it in the chuck, but given that I'm going to hollow it out anyway, I might as well start by putting it into the chuck. So there we go. This is one of the ones that goes the normal way around. Where'd that come from? Chuck, courtesy John, he kindly brought it in because we have such a cool club lathe, we don't actually have a chuck for it. Yep. Before I really tighten it up, I'm gonna align that here, make sure it's kind of aligned, and then hold that tightly in place.
Is it recording? Should be. Oh, okay.
And I always use both sides of the chuck. Here. So you tighten up here, go to the other side, tighten it up again, just to make sure that everything moves. It also makes sure that you have to rotate it and that you don't end up with your tool rest sitting here and the thing not rotating and then switching it on, and you're getting all kinds of nasty effects there. So what I have to do first is round the whole thing off a little bit. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it out a little bit further. I'm going to have it so in there. Don't normally use a pen chuck because that's, you know, for really small turnings. About half an inch, that's typically enough.
Why are you moving it out?
Pardon?
Why are you moving it out?
So that I can round it off right to the end and work from there. So now you can see that I'm clearing my little handle there. Second one. Put this in place, and put that in place. So this is all spinning alright. Once this moved, I always pull on my tool rest just to make sure that it's all in place. Yeah. Everything is straight, so you can do it like that and shake yourself about. It's probably okay, it's not going to fly off immediately. There you go. We're all safe.
Well, two of you are.
Hmm?
Two of you are.
The line of fire, it's only bolts that we're going to hit, right? And those are replaceable. So, there we go. Let me just switch on the thing. Okay, so I bring the chisel up, I bite the bevel, and I've got the this one or two, then I square things round. Thing to think about is that if you go round of this way, that's steel. And that steel is kind of the similar hardness to this, and it means they're both loose. Right? You damage both these and the chuck, so you want to make sure that you don't go too close here. And it's called the roughing gouge because it's rough. How do you know whether this is round or square? It still rattles, it's obviously not quite round. Getting pretty close, and as you can see, indeed, there's still just a little bit of a flat there. Little bit of a flat here, and here it's just about disappeared. It wasn't quite square, so I wouldn't expect it to go exactly round. Give it up both on it at the end.
You're left-handed?
No, I'm totally right-handed. Although I use my computer mouse with my left hand. I'm explaining myself. Takes about a week and a half or so to figure that one out. That's a lot quieter. See? Okay, this still has a little bit of a flat on it. Let's see. No, not really flat, just slightly
You're
different wood.
getting
But
away
anyway.
from the chuck, it has more of a hollow sound.
Pardon?
You're getting away from the chuck, it has more of a hollow sound.
Yeah, that too. So to clean that up near the edge here, one easy way of doing that is to get screw up the thing. Hacker in there, and the reason you want to do that is that now gives me a nice clear line here that I know is still clear of the metalwork. If I kind of leave that round and you kind of cut in there, you don't quite know where the metalwork sits. Another way of, if you're worried about that you can't see it so well, is to take a bit of masking tape with a contrasting color. So don't use the cream colored stuff because that doesn't show it so much, but of course now you get a much clearer indication of where the metalwork sits and where your tools don't want to be. Right?
Martin, was there a reason that you're using the chuck instead of a spur drive? Is there a reason you're using the chuck instead of a spur drive?
In this particular case, I could use a spur drive, and especially if it's a bigger piece that you want to get around on first, but I'm going to be hollowing it from the end, and I would have to remount it, and I might as well start straight with the chuck. You know, hold it into there. So, first thing then to do is to get a pencil again, because you know that sketch that is made on it? Yeah, it's kind of gone, right? So I just kind of re-sketch it out and think, oh yeah, it's going to be kind of like that, just to make sure that I don't miss out on enough wood for the lid here, and I need enough wood for the insert, and I need enough to part it off. So my cup sits about here, so that means that that's about the gap that I'm going to get in there. And that's actually a little bit small for the big gouge, so I'm going to use a smaller spindle gouge to kind of get that off. Again, you can put a bit of tape here and here to measure that off. Another way of doing it, if you make a sketch, is to take a bit of masking tape and put that on the bottom of your thing, and then say there's a mark there and there's a mark over there. One thing to remember is that when you make a mark like that you don't touch this handle. Because I've done that, I made the marks and then
The marks don't line up anymore.
move it a bit closer, and then it's like, oh, why does that not work? It's like, I'm right on my marks. Yeah, ah, shit, yes, of course, yes. Move that thing, it doesn't work so well. So, start with a point scraper or with a skew or anything with a sharp edge. You know, most of them have sharp points somehow, and just put a little mark there, and for the top is gonna finish about there, and then the lid is gonna sit about there. Right? So I've got these marks, I'm also gonna just highlight those there and there and there. So that's where I wanted my other marks, because again, by the time I'm turning, these will again disappear. But this way I keep them in there. So now I have to hollow out Listen, the reason I'm doing this now, before I go and do this hollowing out, is I want to do that while I'm still sitting with the tailstock in place so that it's nice and stable. So, you write the bevel on it, and of course you first get a bit of burning on the wood, but it's all going to disappear, this wood, it doesn't really matter. Always cut downhill, don't allow your chisel to ride back out of the hole, right? Because if you go up, it's just going to catch. So start on this side, and you roll into the cut. And one way of always thinking of doing it is just imagine it's not turning, right? And I'm going to be sitting here and try to carve away this shape. And I would go with the bevel sitting flat onto the wood to carve this out. But it's going to take a long time. That's why people invented this amazing thing that kind of does the spinning.
Can you bring with the camera, bring what you're doing a little closer in, because you're a little far away. Can you bring it in a little more?
Good.
You good?
Is that?
So we can see what he's doing.
Oh, that's even better.
There you go.
Way better.
Like that. I'm just going to stand off to the side a bit. So what I'm saying is that, you don't come in like this. I mean, you could try that, but, right?
That's dangerous.
You see, that's not good, right? And it's okay with trying a little bit, but you imagine doing that with a bowl their size.
One thing I would ask is, wouldn't you want to cut off the end of your piece for your lid and then hollow it out before you cut that out so you give it more strength?
I'm not going to quite finish this. I'm just going to do the main part of it,
Okay.
where you just want to go and get some. So you want to make sure that you end up with enough thickness here, about ½ inch. That has got to be the things at the handle, and get a nice start here. And then afterwards, when I'm done, cut it here. So this is now still about 1 inch diameter. That gives me good strength. And now I only need to take little cuts afterwards when I am no longer with a tailstock. Although you could, even when it's open, you could still get a tailstock right down in the bottom and give a bit of support there. But this now is reasonably good to go. So now the next thing is to make the lid. And to make the lid, first of all, I'm going to look at the whole shape of the thing, and I'm going to get some more even cut on this. So I'm going to look about the shape. I'm going to think about. I always try to make these things even. So I get basically a copy of the lid shape on the other side as well, so you don't see where the lid is so much. But again, you can make it whatever shape you like. There is going to be once the lid is in, you're going to always see where the glue line is. So you might as well highlight it and not try to hide that glue line and just make it a feature. So the actual lid, the actual box is only going to go to about here. So this in the middle is the waste, because I have to be able to get in there in order to get it all off. So this little bit of rounding, I'm going to kind of copy that onto the lid. Right? So I've got a little bit of a round piece, and this is a really terrible piece, but I have to do that. And now I'm just going to take off the front piece here. I could also use the roughing gouts for that in order to get rid of that. And of course, depending on how big the piece of wood is, because we've got that hole in there with the spike, you could glue a piece of plywood on it first and then have the tailstock go into the piece of plywood. Always best to use plywood because it's unlikely to split on you if you put that flat on there, glue flat on there just to hold it in place. Means that you don't waste that extra ½ inch of the wood. And if you've got a really nice piece of wood, you don't want to waste that last piece. Here I've made sure it was long enough. And I'm gonna cut that in. you end up with a bit of a knob on the top. And you really, you know, you can make it whatever shape you like. And then you just afterwards you sand that flat. So here we got a bit of a shape in there. So now the thing to do is before we go and take this top off, for which I'll put the tail saw back in place, I have to finish it. So now that I've got my markings, I don't worry about this one so much, and I have to make sure that I finish this. Now to get a very fine finish, of course you want to get the finest sandpaper on there, but you always want to...
Larry, can you move the camera on the other side?
No.
Well, that'll block your view. Right?
Can't get to
so I make a little round hole just to center the whole thing. Get that out of the way. Then I'm going to measure as far as possible. Then I get my trusty sandpaper. I say I'm going to cut to about this deep. It doesn't have to be overly deep. So on comes a bit of masking tape. Now I don't have to go and measure and whatever. I just go and drill this. Now if I had a drill chuck that went on the end of the tailstock, you could use that, but really not that important. What is important is that, especially if you drill a deep hole, that you don't drill that in one go, because it'll just block all this up and start to burn and block it in place. So you just go in and out to clean the wood out of the way. And now I've got a nice center hole. So two nice things about that. First of all, a turning tool in the middle never works very well, because the middle of the wood doesn't actually move. Like, it's standing still essentially, and so there is no cutting action. So whatever I'm trying to cut with my chisel doesn't do much. So I drilled it out of the way, and now I don't have to deal with that anymore. The other thing is, because I know that the depth is there, I don't have to sit there and think like whether I've been deep enough or whatever. I just hollow it out to the depth of that point, and I should be good to go. Get my tool. Then I got a little round nose scraper. If it's a bigger thing, you can use a bigger scraper, right? Bigger round nose scrapers. I specifically brought like my old tools, you know, this here, this box. 8 of these, like $10 at Amazon. Right? If you just need stuff that you just happily grind with and play with and everything, so this will do that. It's pretty bit rough, so I'm just using the smaller tool. Speed that up again a bit. Things are always different if you don't use your own chuck and what have you.
This is why live demos are better than YouTube.
Yes,
We see
totally.
what you do and it doesn't quite
Yes,
work.
so YouTube, you stop the camera, film it again, you know, and you
Yeah,
don't see any of that.
Everything
And so the most important thing here is to get that first quarter-inch or so that the lid is going to sit in. The rest just has to be big enough to hold the rattle. first I go to the full width, and then I'm working my way in, rather than going to the full depth and then working my way out. So that the outside can do the least on that. So in here. And again, as long as it is here, I can happily go and cut away this inside. Which is paper, and I can still feel that center hole is still there. I haven't reached that yet. I could also hold this up here, put a bit of masking tape on here, and again then I know how deep I can go. But given that I wanted to drill that hole in there anyway to start the cut from, alright. Yeah, not so deep yet. Not just deep, so. But, yeah, a little bit deeper.
Is there any reason not to go as fast as possible when you're going on the inside like that?
Comfort.
What is that? To have a faster spinning lathe? Faster spinning lathe makes you work quicker, and I do it purely as a hobby. You know, I want to relax for half an hour, I go and do some stuff for half an hour, but then go do fast, I'm done in 15 minutes. That's like going for a hike and thinking, you know what, if I just go round the block and go straight home, it's much quicker than going all the way up that stupid mountain.
Or
Right.
running up the mountain.
Or running as you know, to me that's not the point. It is true. If you go faster, you probably get a smoother cut on the inside here. That doesn't really matter. And if you go faster, then you also get faster fly-offs and stuff. So, yeah.
But the smaller you go, the faster you have to turn,
Right.
because it's foot speed per second
Right.
of the surface that you're cutting.
The really small stuff, I turn at 20,000 drifts. Don't think many other people here turn at 20,000 drifts.
But you can't see it, so it
20,000?
doesn't
I
matter.
don't think so.
Well, exactly.
Mine goes up to 36, I think.
So
3,600, yeah, exactly.
when I go at $4,000, I feel so inadequate against the 20 grand that you're turning.
I always feel inadequate when I turn, so
Once again,
that's
size.
good enough. Anyway, so now that I've done the main hollowing, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this end piece here. And the same you can do if you make like a bigger jar, a lidded jar or whatever, leave the little witness ring up there, and then you can just play and gouge and do whatever you want to do. And also if you do sanding on the inside, as long as that witness ring is still there, you haven't rounded off that inside by mistake. And even if you do round a little bit off, it catches you when the rounding off is 16 of an inch outside where you're using it. Alright, so now we see that it is just coming off here. Get this out of the way. Hiding under the salt. It's just about getting in. So I'm just gonna slightly.
I'm surprised you wouldn't just sand it at this point to make sure you don't overdo it.
Yeah, I'm not going to sand the inside. This is quite smooth enough on the inside, and it's all going to be locked up. There's no point in this your fingers trying to sand the inside.
Emphasizing.
For the sizing.
To
Oh.
get the size right.
Yes, the problem is with sanding for sizing is that it is never round, right? Because the wood always, because depending on the direction of the grain and everything, you're always going to sand a bit more on one side than the other side. So the moment you start sanding, it starts to get off round, whereas this is more likely to keep it round.
Okay.
Side grain goes faster than pretty close.
It's pretty much.
We got a lot of fiber on the outside too.
Yeah, there's still a bit.
Looks like it's going in, but it's very close.
It's easy to put in the back of the truck and carry.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I rent it from AAA at the end of 17. I could use yours out here. So I already got mine out of the way and then figure it out. Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
So offline because of the
That'd be
different
great. I'll be over there.
pinpoints of the wood and the different sides?
No, it's actually fairly round. He went back and cleaned it all up.
No,
Okay.
I meant if you sand it.
That goes in.
Oh, yeah. When you're looking at,
Just off the end here.
this wall right here, the second one in. Right, on the side there, you've got end grain. On this side, you've got side grain. So it's,
If I do it like that, if I do it like this, I will always put a rounding on the inside. Here it doesn't matter so much if this gets a little bit round, but especially if you want to prevent it, you want to make a nice cut, then just put it on a piece of wood.
But that would only matter.
Yeah, we'll just
It's in his.
nick the end ever so slightly. A little bit on there.
wedge and just put that big wedge.
Okay.
It's an iron wedge. Good luck.
Purple heart?
Yeah.
Small nail into some purple heart. It bounced.
Okay, and there you go. So now, when I'm going to glue that in, I want to make sure that I align the grain so that any working in the wood when it gets wet, and baby rattles tend to get wet from the slobberings, that it all goes in the same direction and that it has the least chance of breaking anything. So this here, I've made these little grooves to get good grip on the glue, and I'm going to do the same on the inside. And like this. Parting tool here, just go from the other side and just touch the inside a little bit just to get a couple of grooves in there, just to roughen it up, and that'll make sure that the glue is held properly. Now we need a rattle. So a 2019 penny, assuming it's for a baby born this year, you put
A
you
penny.
can put like a 2019 penny in there, so the first savings for the baby, right?
Break the rattle, you get it.
And you glue that in place. And this is going to make quite a solid glue joint when you glue
And
that
that
in
rattles
place.
enough.
And it's going to rattle that. So
Huh.
before I do that,
I
then
was thinking.
I now have to finish this off. So one way to finish it off, if this moves a bit too much, is to put you can put a tailstock right in the end here and hold that back in place.
Which I think it will.
You can also just, assuming it's held strong enough, just take very light cuts. The inside here doesn't have to be that thin, particularly. And I'm using the scraper you could use the gouge, of course. Problem, of course, here, if you then miss it, then you go, and you get this big, nice spiral over there. These don't have that problem. They never. They don't. They don't catch. So you just get a little shape, whatever shape you like. With a wet on wet titanium white. Right? We think of Bob Ross, right, when he's explaining his stuff.
Oh, okay.
So then use this Q. Q is very good at making things round. And then you get a rounding on the inside. So that's that part. Off you go. This goes out of the way. This piece here, to make it a bit thinner. You know why you have to move the sandpaper? Even though the spinning goes fast enough.
So you don't grind little grooves into it that are harder to get out.
Well, that's one, you get
Doesn't
grooves
fit
if you don't
better.
move it, and also all the grit, all the wood fiber sits in one spot and it will start to burn. If you go like that, the vibration will then kind of loosen it and stop the sandpaper from loading up. So that's 120. 150. The next grade up should always be less than double the previous grade. If you go to exactly double, if you go from 220 to 440, if that's possible, what's going to happen is you got the big 220 grooves and the 440 are going to sit exactly in between, so you're actually going to leave them. Whereas if you have one that is 1.5, 1.6, whatever times bigger, then it all randomizes out. And again, all I'm doing here with this 220 is removing the 180 grit grooves. I'll start with the coarser sandpaper. Right? This is 120 grit. And you always have to go through the grits, never miss out a grit. Because sadly, 400 does not make anything shiny. All 400 grit can do is remove the grooves that are left by 320 grit. And all 320 grit can do is remove the 220 grit grooves and down such. So in the end, if I start out by using a really fine sandpaper, all my coarser grooves are still in there and I can sand forever and it will never look good. So I have to start with a coarse one, and in this case that's 120. You move the tool rest out of the way. You know, don't ever think like, oh yeah, we'll just do some sanding here, because it's going to catch, it's going to then take your finger with it and wrap your finger in there, and stuff like that I'm told is painful. I don't have to sand.
I had a friend of mine do that, and it pulled all the skin off his finger down to the bone. Do not get your finger behind that tool rest.
So how many people come around the other side for sanding? So that's coming away from you.
On this side?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
So that you don't, since you're holding it with your hand, so you don't have
It is
your hand.
underneath.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So what I have at home is I've got my 4-inch dust extractor with a big hose on it.
Yeah.
and I kind of connected it to my angle point lamp, so I can kind of use that to move it around in place. And it sits above it, where you can see is that the big piece, as you turn, go away, but all the dust kind of gets sucked in there and disappears out of the way.
So on the Norwegian wood turning cruise where we had 7 lathes running in a single room, we did not sand except for the oil. They said,
Right, you want to
oil it up and then sand, and then we didn't make any dust.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is here, but I know that in Vancouver there, most of the demos were not allowed to sand.
Right.
Not allowed to sand.
Not allowed to sand, yeah, because dust allergies and everything.
Yeah.
Now maple is I think one of the lowest allergies wood you can possibly have.
But it still generates particles that you're breathing in.
It still generates particles, so that's why the door is open. Right.
Oh, well, if you're oiling your wood, aren't you loading up your paper really quick?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It
You
worked.
use sandpaper
I
as
was
if somebody else
stunned
pays
by
for
what
it,
Yeah, that would be good.
right?
Yeah, push
I'm
some
sorry,
wood.
use sandpaper?
As if somebody else is paying for it,
Yes, definitely.
always. So I move the tool rest. After I move the tool rest, I always turn it, just automatic. Because you never know where you kind of move the tool, and suddenly you move it this way,
That's a good
and then it just still catches something. It's all not good. My switch isn't this.
I know.
Sue, what kind of oil did you use when you loaded it?
I'm not sure what they used. Is that a
Mineral
question?
oil, walnut
Yeah,
oil.
probably mineral oil, I would bet.
Not salad, not
Brie
salad
wax with
oil.
mineral oil mix.
Yeah, I was
So there we go.
surprised it worked.
So this is 100 grit. So what's it? 120. You can see it's all very fine shavings coming of that. I want to keep my little center line. If you notice that you are adjusting the shape with your sandpaper, then put the sandpaper away, shut it down, put the tools rest back in place, get your tools out, make it the shape you wanted to make it. Right? Because you're unlikely to get it in good shape. One trick, if you want to make anything flat, like the spurtle or these other things, and you want to get it nice and flat so that when people go and pick them up, and they're like, you know, got a bit of a lumpy effect to it. You know how to do that?
Always.
Take a piece of nice flat wood, you know, offcut from floorboard or something like that, and go like that, and sand like that. Take out all the ridges and you get it perfectly nice, and that's what I did like with the spurtle, you know, to get that in one shape. So here, doesn't really matter. I've yet to hear a 2-week-old baby complain about wall thicknesses and stuff. So. And the parents are typically in those first couple of weeks not in any shape to go and complain about anything either. And what you do is you look at this
Shut the baby.
and you make sure that there are no grooves left, so that any feature, any grooves you can see, you can make it move while moving your sandpaper around. If there's something that doesn't move while you move your sandpaper, then there's a deep hole that you still have to sand all the way out, and if it takes too long, then your sandpaper isn't coarse enough, right? If something not smooth, what you do is you get a coarser graded, bit of sandpaper. So if I now go to my 150 grit, and I go here with the 150, and I see that there is bits that, still kind of, I move it round, and that feature doesn't move with the sandpaper, then I have to go back to the 120 and not think like, oh yeah, I'll just deal with that with the next grain. There's also, if you want to do really smooth stuff, and do remember, this is baby rattle, it's going to be sucked and nibbled and whatever, it's never going to remain smooth or shiny for any long amount of time, but that doesn't matter. But it's always best then to finish with any rate of sandpaper is to do a final sanding in the direction of the grain. You can see it's getting fairly smooth, and that's only 150. And then we get 220. You could take 180, but I didn't bring 180. And if you do it right, if you make sure that in your first cutting there is nothing left other than the grooves that this sandpaper has made, then all the other sandings are only ever going to need a very light touch. because there is no big hole, no gaps, no nothing that needs to be dealt with. And then you take a bit of 320. And then piece 400. And for this particular thing, there really is no need to go to anything more than that. And then here again, we'll go and fill it out, you know, as smooth as a baby bottom, as it should be, right? So that's why you make sure that you always go through. So now I have to take the lid off, and the lid is one thing to think about. So if I now can't align my markings to where they roughly were, then I will roughly know where I was going to cut my lid. And so for that, I use a parting tool. Just so that we want. There we go. So I'll make a little cut. Now the depth of this cut is what's going to define the wall thickness of the cup, right? And that's got to be thick enough. Right? If you do wood turn like that, you like to get these really thin things. You can imagine there's a little billy smashing it about, and you don't want it to break. So this here has got to be deep enough. So 4 millimeters, you know, 5 millimeters. You don't quite need a 1/4 inch, but it's whatever the so many 30 seconds. I don't do that. So that's the size of the wall thickness. Now what I could do, I could just keep cutting, and then I would have a lid that doesn't fit so well. That would just be flat glued on. So what I now do is I'm going to make this same cut four times. So I cut 4 times the thickness of my parting tool, and I'm going to cut it and just spin it until it's all perfectly cylindrical and not tapered out at all nice and smooth. And the reason it's 4 times is that I need these 4 things. The first 2 widths of this, and I'm going to slightly undercut that here to get a nice clean fitting. So the first 2 widths is the bit that's going to end up inside the cup, and that's where the glue is going to happen. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to take my little skew and use it as an end auger and just cut a couple of grooves in that, and that'll grip the glue real well. So that is to keep that straight. Then I'm going back to the to my parting tool, and I'm going to take the third one. So I'm going to leave about 1 width of the parting tool onto the cup end. And now I'm going to part this off. Not quite, most of the way. So now all the heavy stuff is done. I'm going to switch this off. And I'm going to take this off. Take that out of the way. Right. So now I can finish this off with a nice simple cut, and what I use for that is a round nose scraper. And with the round nose scraper Very gently knocked it out of
I see
shape.
it too.
I want to retract your thing.
It's wood, right? Wood only stays in place for so long. And
I'm
then
so glad I did that, because I want to know what you do now.
Retract.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
you know, the other one, the other lighted one,
If you want to work
it's one of those rules. If it doesn't work, kick it, and if it doesn't work, kick it a bit harder.
we do that anyway.
So I look here. I
I can show you some stuff.
get as high as
I love
possible.
that.
It pretty much sits back in place.
Those guys should have been here. Should be.
yeah.
I could also just sand the whole thing off. Once you're done with the whole thing, you could just sand all this and not bother about doing this on the lathe. But that kind of gives it nice and smooth. To sand it on the lathe, you can do that. Just always remember to get the tool rest out of the way. And also remember that you do start with the coarsest of the grids.
If we were trying to sand the sides at all now, it would be hard because it's all off center.
Well, to sand this,
Sandy can do that.
it
not so
wobble a
much.
little bit, but that doesn't matter so much. As I said, the baby is not going to notice. And
Wood turners notice it.
if you won't tell, I won't.
He won't play with it unless he's going to offset it. More interesting that way.
It's just to prove that it wasn't made in a big factory at by IKEA, where it would all be dead straight, because that'd be boring.
I hate plastic toys.
320 and then 400. Right, and you can just hear that nice and smooth that gets. Now, after a while, this gets a bit smoother, right? Now, one thing that does not happen is that a well-worn piece of 320 does not become a piece of 400,
No.
right? A well-worn piece of 320 sounds like a well-worn piece of 320.
And you put it in the trash.
Virtually not at all.
Or not all, right? If you want the 400, you need 400, and if the 400 piece becomes well-worn, there is a special place for that. It's called the round archive. One right over there.
It's amazing how people still do that.
Right?
It's
So
amazing
now,
people still think that.
so the little pip is still here. I could have gotten rid of that completely. Maybe I'll sand it off later, whatever.
You did say something.
But
This is a demo.
for this, it's just a demo. I'm not going to bother with that. So now I'm back here. I could actually, given that that pip hole is still there, I could use that while I do the parting here. This gets a little bit of stability. So get my. It's that one.
What diameter, what thickness is that? Is that a 16th
That's
inch?
16th,
That
isn't it?
would be 1/16.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me. Did anybody see on these on all those wooden pegs there? You see all the batons? It's got all the black rings on it.
Oh, yes.
Do you know how you get those nice and evenly spaced?
What you mean?
Yeah, no, that's the one. Well, this one, actually, this one I can show that first. This one has got nice black rings.
There you go.
So
This is
for
what I
that,
did.
what you do, that's going to do that. So to highlight, because I'm going to get a glue line here, what I'm going to do at this side is just put a little bead in there, or little groove. Get this out of the way. Get my little killing stick.
When you're done,
Just piece of stainless steel wire
It's the wood turning Garrett.
on a bit of wood. Exactly. And you hold it up here until it starts to smoke. And I got a nice black burnt line. Another thing about that, even I've got some thinner wire as well, you can take a tiny little bit and that'll stop paint from bleeding. So if you wanted to put some color on here, or onto the bead, it'll stop any from the ink from going to the side. One thing to remember is that you do always want to clean it up a bit once you've done that kind of sanding, or that kind of burning, to clean it up a bit. So that's one way to do that. If I wanted to put some more detail on there, now if you look at one of the other ones, it's got all those, the one that has got a whole series of rings. Now how do you get those rings to be nice and evenly spaced? You can measure it. These are 1/16 of an inch apart.
Beading tool.
You can use a beading tool 1/60 here. And then this one same color as the box. $400 always I find in hardwood, that's the one that starts, the first wood to start to shine up the wood. Anything under 400 is still rough, but 400 is the one that starts to shine stuff. So there we go. It's all smooth like this. Couple of little, just a little bit of a tear out there, so no point using this. We have to go right back to the beginning. Cover it up.
Does anyone ever sand like that if you're doing a large bowl? Because I always thought you had to put it on a drill and keep it going around. And
Yes, on the bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
For something this small, you couldn't. So.
I use a little round
That
pad
doesn't
and I
really
just
go
hold
in
it in
there
and
so
use
well.
like that with my hand.
Yeah.
On larger balls, like one of those things, I use an oscillating air sander
Okay.
for a 2-inch.
So you can get these little 2-inch patches that could almost do this. It's just for something small as this. That doesn't really. It doesn't work so well.
Let's see if it does. Yeah.
220.
I find that the higher it gets, not higher it gets, but I guess the lower it gets, 120, if I want to cut down more quickly, a lower speed seems to work better.
Yeah.
Is that true for other people?
Yeah, as a general rule, you don't usually want to sand over 600. And I usually get better results between 350 and 420.
Why?
Yeah,
It just
it gets too smooth. Now you
Seems to
just
get better. You're not burning your hands for one thing.
Yeah.
You can get in there and you know, just sand easily without having to worry about it.
if you're going to put something on it, then it's, you still want to have a bit. It's like
Yeah,
when
some
you
people do
smooth.
that.
I always said,
So you just
sand
get
it at.
more stuff coming off.
I'll have to try that. I've never actually taken it that low. I'll try it. I know where I'm going tonight, right after we're here, so.
Remember that little expo we went to?
Boulder Creek.
What's his name? Brett? The guy from Colorado. He mentioned him. Trent Fox.
Shrimp box, yeah. Some people, yeah.
And never turn your, never take the tool rest away. You don't want to move the,
The kid that started off really fast.
start this, start the lathe before you've locked the tool rest and you checked it. You also don't want to move the tool rest while it's still spinning. Because here, if I pull the tool rest away and it turns a bit and it touches this, I might get a tiny nick. If I do it while it's still spinning, I'll probably demolish my piece of wood.
Probably wouldn't be a good thing.
So here, before I go and sand this off, I get a bit of rounding started here. And this is Norton 3 times. Anybody use other stuff?
Yeah, the cheaper stuff.
Although that's Klingspor, that's Swiss, that's also good stuff. But don't buy cheap, mega packs of the sand kind of paper that actually has sand on it, right? I mean, it's just horrible. it's worth spending a bit of money on the good sandpaper.
Yeah, just like your gouges. Use cheap
Right.
gouges.
Some of these are cheap. And I'm going to cut it off, and again, I'm going to cut a little bit away from the piece of music. Alright, so now I haven't pulled fibers out of here. And otherwise you're going to get fibers out of there, you can sand forever, but you always see that center speck. So what I do with this now is I've got to sand that, and of course I'm a lazy git. So do that by hand, it won't take too long.
Martin is so lazy.
Clearly.
That's why you use the micro lead.
Yeah.
It gives enough work. He can just rest his head and go.
Yep. Do not leave the.
Took your class and yeah.
Don't leave the chuck key in the chuck. Even for a second.
Chucky.
Yes. I'm really crazy about that. Goddamn machine.
The other thing, I noticed you're grabbing the wheel to stop the lathe. I was doing that with mine, and yeah, I was cranking quite a bit higher R's. The chuck came off. It continued to spin,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
and it chased me around the garage.
Boy, I
Yes.
What I do when I put mine on, well, there's two things you can do. On John's lathe, I was turning a 23.5 inch big walnut blank, is about that thick. It was a monster, and he told me if you don't lock it down, it will come off. I've never had that problem. I'm thinking, why would it do this, right? And of course, it's the weight. So his has one or two little grub screws that you screw in there and push it against the threads, or in the, there's a little groove in there before the threads, and it locks it in place so it can't come out. Mine, I don't even know if mine has it. When I put mine on, I just like slam it in, and I've never had the thing come off.
This is actually, it's a like a template sander. So if you've got a template out of a piece of plywood, then you can hold another piece of wood on that, and this follows the template, and it'll sand the wood that is above it.
Fancy tools.
But then you can also use a bigger one. I just didn't have one of these. I just wanted to see both sides. I've got these ones. I used to have one of those rubber things, and then I was always changing, because you can unscrew this, change the sleeve for another one. And then at some point I thought, you know what, they're $10 a piece.
Yeah, get another.
And so now I've got a couple of them, and with different grits of sandpaper on them.
Get those at Harbor Freight also?
Actually Busy Bee Tools, but that's the Harbor Freight equivalent in Canada. So I would think they have them.
You live in Canada?
I used to live in Vancouver for a long time, but I'm from Holland. In the Netherlands.
The other Canada.
My last name is Kunstenaar.
Uh-huh.
Danish? Or Holland? Dutch.
No, my last name.
Actually, amazingly, I'm going to Holland on Monday.
I wish I had. I lost so many people, I changed my name.
So to go in France for business, and it turned out it was cheaper for me to fly back via Amsterdam and have a layover there and fly back at a better time. So my ticket is cheaper than various colleagues who are flying straight out to Toulouse and back. So I did a couple of days back in Holland.
So you made this, this mandrel yourself?
No, I just bought that.
Oh, okay.
And it comes with the standard 3-inch sleeves in different grids. Just that instead of having to swap it out, I just have a, whenever it's worn out, I put a new one on.
It's easier.
Well, I just cut it off, right?
But why would you choose a round? I mean, you want it to be a little bit.
Oh, sure, but I kind of move around a bit like that. You can use whatever shape on there, and then
She's in charge of the demo, okay?
anything I showed, feel free to do.
Well,
anything the way you like it with your tools and the way you do your design. So now that it's kind of smoothed out, so then go for some 220 and a bit of 320 and a bit of 400.
So, yeah, if you want to.
And then, so the penny goes in there, and we'll glue it in place with the
I would love to.
with the grain aligned.
That's beautiful.
And this is quite loud enough for the babies to hear, and compared to really noisy tools that or toys that babies sometimes get, parents love this.
That's awesome.
Nobody will hate this baby.
I like the penny idea. I've used popcorn.
I know.
Right. Yeah, but it's a
Popcorn.
penny. It's the right idea. It'll never be seen again. Right.
Or, yeah, BB's.
But just in case it does ever come apart,
Oh, that's
You
not
know.
bad. So after you glue
And
it
then-
on, you
and then
put a
one
burn
more
mark
thing.
on the.
That's gorgeous.
I think we should give this guy a drum roll, don't you?
one last thing.
Remember, when you're watching Martin, you're watching, it is rocket science.
Tool. And how long would that take?
Not that long at all.
Not that long, but longer than what I use.
Okay.
The
Yours,
curry
yours is using a threading tool.
It's a thread chaser,
It's a what?
right?
Thread
16 turn, 16 TPI, 16
Very good.
turns per inch
threads per inch.
thread. And this time, of course, I'm not going to make a thread. I'm just going to simply go like that. And I can, of course, add some to it. And so if you want to measure stuff, these here, you'll find that these are 17 cuts, so they front to the bend exactly 1 inch, and they're 1/16 apart. I thought I could actually put some extra lines exactly 1 inch, so you can even use it as a little ruler.
So you must have bought that thread chaser, you didn't make that.
No, I didn't make that thread chaser. I did want to buy it, yes.
Guess you could make one from a saw blade.
Walker could probably make one.
From a saw blade, but saw blades that tend to be offset left and right. If you just take a big bolt and grind it off a bit, that gets you.
Can you
I think
pass
as
that
well.
tool around, please? Mark? I would love to look at it up close.
And then once we have this here, I then again take my
Way cool.
That's the external. External.
take my thread,
Yeah.
take my
There's
piece of
another one
wire,
that has them like this and they go inside.
Never seen that before.
get a bit of burning.
I love doing that burning, it's super fun. These are way more small.
And the cool thing is that because they're exactly perfectly evenly spaced, it just makes it look nice.
C string
G.
And if you miss one, that's okay. You just go back and do it again.
It's probably bad.
Anybody notice a safety violation?
Sleeves.
Slaves.
Long sleeve shirt and the hood's up.
And the hood's up, yeah, exactly. I was waiting for you guys to go and say something about that.
His ponytail's not hanging down, so that's good.
Anyway,
Ponytail? Yeah, you cut it off, I think.
bit of cleaning up. Now here, you don't put a you don't put the 80 grit on because then you would lose it all.
Right.
Just a bit of fine sandpaper. And you just get a nice little pattern sitting on that. So off we now go, and
Careful with the camera.
it's not my camera. I use the club's camera, so of course.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway. So now we go and continue parting this one out. Now, one thing that is going to guarantee to make this go ugly is if I keep parting it off. Because at some point it's going to go plop and it'll tear out
And it's between
fibers
centers too.
quite deep that you'll never be able to sand out because you can pull out like 1/8 of an inch of fiber, right? And you're not going to sand that much away. So you stop there, you get it out of the way, get the axle out, and you cut it. And of course, in this time, I'm going to cut it on the end, on the edge of the cut, because that's going to disappear anyway. Right on the other end, where the lid sits, I want to keep that. Right, so I've now cut this. So that's my lid. And we're going to sand it up a bit later. So now I have a width here. Now I can go through all kinds of hassle and I didn't bring my calipers. So I can try to measure this, and this is 30 millimeters, and then I can try to measure this, but luckily I've left a little witness piece up there that is exactly the same size as this. So what I can now do is get this thing out of the way, get my tool rest in front. Okay, I won't get my tool rest in front yet. Perfect. And as long as I keep that witness thing up there as I'm hollowing it out, I know I'm not too wide, because once you're too big, then that's not good. Right? It's never going to glue straight. So as long as that is there, I know that I haven't gone too wide. And then in the end, I can just slowly just nip it out of the way and make sure that it fits. But I don't want to keep going forward and back and check and make sure that I haven't gone too far. I know I haven't gone too far because that ridge is still there. So then, what I need, you know, if you have an old drill that burns out, keep the drill bit, get a bolt that has the right thread on it. Like this here, you get the right thread and put it on a handle, and now you get a handy